Hello everybody, Infinite Shinjo here, and welcome to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Review. And this time I am reviewing the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime. So GX is an interesting case because for the most part I watched it dubbed, but infamously from anybody that knows Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, the fourth season of it was never dubbed. And that's weird because in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links they have Jaden Ubel, which is a more mature version of Jaden in Season 4. And they have dubbed voices for that, so I don't know, that's kind of interesting that they reference stuff from Season 4 in Duel Links when the fourth season was never dubbed. And before you comment, I know why Season 4 wasn't dubbed. It's certainly a darker season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, but they could have made it work. They've made everything else work in the show, they could easily have dubbed that. So, let's go on to the arcs, and I'm not really sure what to call the first arc before the Shadow Riders come in, more like just the beginning point. There's not really much to talk about there for that matter. It's literally just character of the days, dueling Jaden. The whole thing with Cyrus getting his confidence, Paradox Brothers thing, that was cool to see. But moving on to the Shadow Riders, the biggest thing I have an issue with is, for some reason, Cyrus and Chumley don't get the little bracelet things. Now granted, I know why Chumley didn't, because he only duels one time before this point, so I kind of get that. But Cyrus? Why not give Cyrus one? It just makes perfect sense. Because the most he does in the Shadow Riders arc is become a hostage when Jaden is dueling Night Shroud and when Zane's dueling Camula. Cyrus is just literally a hostage. But yeah, Shadow Riders arc, it's okay. It's the same thing that I've talked about in the original series, that Jaden's just gotta be the one to win the big duel at the end. Now the Society of Light, again, it ends with Jaden winning, but I'm gonna try and stop talking about it because that's a simple thing that happens through every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, so it's not gonna be something that changes anytime soon. But Society of Light is certainly interesting. I've watched a lot of episodes of that much more recently. And I just love how the dubcast went wild with it. Like, Sartori is saying, "I'd rather not stand out," and Hasselberry in the back saying, "Get a new haircut." It was a similar thing in the sub, but it's just cool how the GX dub is more inventive with stuff like that. Especially around when Viper, Jim Cook, Adrian, all those people come in. They're a lot more wild with how things are. Especially Cyrus. And normally it's weird because, like in Pokemon, Team Rocket's always the one to break the fourth wall. But in here, starting from the Viper part, Cyrus is always the one that breaks the fourth wall. I have literally seen Yu-Gi-Oh! GX out of context videos on YouTube, and they are just absolutely hilarious. But from the point where Viper comes in, is where things get really heavy. You get stuff like the whole relationship between Jesse and Jaden, to the whole point of Jaden turning into the Supreme King, which they kind of touched on that in the original series with Yugi playing the Asilivori Calcos, but the fact that Jaden actually turns into a villain, in a sense, is just really cool to see. And I like how he actually got some duels with his new evil heroes that he uses, where he defeats Jim Cook and he ties with Axel Brody. That's just really cool and actually gives the Supreme King cred as an actual duelist, even though he only dueled twice, which is much more than I can say for Darks from the original series. Now for the Darkness arc, I think it's called the Darkness arc, Season 4. I'm just gonna call it Season 4. I don't really remember much of it. I remember that Five-Headed Dragon is used. I know Honest is involved. There's a character called Yusuke Fujiwara. And there's Darkness, obviously. But like specific parts of it, I can't really remember. I know there's a part where Axel's involved in it. But yeah, I remember certain parts of it. And I'll get to that later. So like I mentioned earlier, starting from the part where Viper comes in, everybody just becomes so self-aware. And at first I mentioned it was only Cyrus, but I remembered that it's not only Cyrus anymore. Because there are points where, I think it was Axel in his room, and then Adrian Gecko's on the outside, and he's just thinking, why does everybody think out loud at this place? And then I think the biggest ones that reference stuff like that are Cyrus and Adrian, because I can think of another point where Adrian does, but it's much easier if you actually watch the show and know what I'm talking about. But yeah, GX characters are honestly top tier. Granted, there are some that are more developed than others, but like, just off the top of my head, Jaiden's a fun character at the start, but he gets really good development. Cyrus, he's a shy backwards kid, and he gets really good development. Alexis, to be fair, doesn't really get as much development, but she's the female lead, so yeah. Although I think there was a thing where she teamed up with Jaden in Season 4, if I'm not mistaken. But then you got characters like Cyrus's older brother, Zane, who is a very intimidating duelist and the first person to give Jaden a loss, which actually means more because it's not under any crazy influences like how Yugi versus Raphael was in Season 4 of Yu-Gi-Oh! But considering that Zane actually gives Jaden a loss, a legitimate loss, that there's nothing else involved, is really cool. And then you get characters like Bastion and Chaz, and I'll touch more on them later, but just Chaz was built up to be a threat, a villain if you will. More like the opposite of Jaden in a sense. He duels Jaden at the start of the series, he comes back for the duel thing, the duel between him and North Academy, he comes back for that and he loses, then he just turns into a joke. He gets Ojama Yellow, Ojama Green, and Ojama Black as dual spirits, and that's just it. He turns into a comic relief character, which isn't really a problem because I like Chaz as a character regardless, but just the fact that they built him up as a threat and just didn't really do as much with him is a little disappointing. Although I do like how he defeated Aster in Season 4. And the thing that I just thought of now when I was writing all this list out is the GX cast had some very cool decks. Like, they had decks that were coming out at the time. Like, Jaden had the Heroes, Cyrus had the Viacroids, Alexis had, I guess, Cyber Angels down the line, and then Chaz comes out with Ojama cards. Even though he didn't have a straight Ojama deck, he still had those three and the King, so that's cool. But he had the Ojamas, the Armed Dragons, and the Vita Z's. And he even brings in like the anime exclusive ones like the B-Tron and stuff. Even Zane himself had a pretty top tier deck with Cyber Dragons. And then even characters like Bastion had the like a whole bunch of special cards. He had the Hydrogeddon, Oxygeddon, Water Dragon combo, even though that didn't really constitute a deck. But then he later used magnets that are different from what Yugi used in the original series. You get Hasabury introduced the same season that Aster Phoenix is introduced. Aster starts off by using E-Heroes to try and lure Jaden in, and then he uses the Destiny Heroes. But Hasabury didn't really have a concrete deck. His deck was just dinosaurs. Here you go. And you get people down the line like Adrian that uses the Cloudians, Jim Cook that uses the fossil cards that are just now getting printed, and Axel getting volcanic monsters. It's kind of unfortunate that Hasabury only gets just vanilla dinosaurs. It's a little bit before the time, but I would have liked to see a Jirac deck just without the Synchro monsters. Or at the same time, if dinosaurs was too hard to make a specific deck for, then maybe give him something else that was out during the time. I don't know what else was out during the time that hasn't been used, but it's just kind of disappointing that Hasabury just had dinosaurs, the deck, and that's it. Granted, he used different cards than what Rex Raptor used, so that kind of makes it okay, but it still leaves a weird taste in my mouth. But on to the things that I didn't like. Like I said earlier, like in the original series, almost every important duel focuses on Jaden winning. And that makes it so there's not really a threat. Jaden steps on the scene, it's done and over with. The only real thing that was different was when Jaden turned into the Supreme King. But that wasn't really a big endgame boss. And like I said before, the dub was never finished. I really would have loved to see a full conclusion of the series dubbed. Although, given it's probably at least 15 to 20 years old now, I highly doubt it'll happen. But you never know, weird things have happened. Samurai Jack came back after a long time, so you never know. So I never really touched on this before, but I'm gonna say it now. If you don't want spoilers for Zane Truesdale, click off the video now. I didn't really want to like give specific things for the series, so that's why I've been kind of vague about it. But if you don't want to know the fate of Zane, please click off the video now. So Zane was dueling Jesse possessed by Yubel after Jaden got off his Supreme King phase. And Zane literally has a heart attack and quite literally bites the big one. Although in the dub they call it he was sent to the stars. But like, in Season 4, Zane's okay. He's in a wheelchair, but he's okay. And I'm just thinking, that's a bit of a cop-out. Because I don't remember the specifics, but I'm wondering how they explained that. Because, in my mind, if you know the context of it, then I don't really need to explain it that much. But basically, there's this dude that uses Shinjo that defeats Zane in a duel or something to that effect, and Cyrus comes in to avenge Zane, and that's it. It's a really cool way to wrap up the series since there was a Shinjo episode focused early on in the series as well, but Zane coming back in Season 4 was just a dumb idea. In my opinion, I would have liked it better if the Shinjo dude that came back in Season 4 was just somebody that Zane beat earlier. Because when Zane went into his emo phase, he was just beating everybody left, right, and center with his shot callers. So I would have liked it if this Shinjo dude comes to Duel Academy or something to take his revenge on Zane for all the stuff he put him through earlier. And Zane's not there because, obviously. And so instead, this Shinjo dude finds out that Cyrus is his brother, and he decides to duel Cyrus instead. And everything can just play out the same way it did. It would have been a lot more harder to believe because I think Cyrus gets the Cyberdark monsters from Zane or something like that. So it would have been interesting to see how they would have done that. But just like, I would have liked it if they would have done it like that instead. Because the fact that Zane comes back with possibly no explanation is just kind of dumb for me. But yeah, that's really all I can talk about with Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Obviously, I could go into specifics. All of these characters are really good characters in my opinion. Even the dub changes like giving Jim an Australian accent is just perfectly hilarious. But on to my favorite character overall. And my favorite character overall, probably not a surprise, Cyrus Truesdale. Ironically, he's the same voice that did Joey in the original series, so I wonder if that'll be a trend. Yeah, I just like Cyrus's development at the end of Season 4. Even built up to this point, Cyrus's development, it's just really cool to see. And I even have a Roid deck in my own. It's probably not that good in all senses of the word because it doesn't have any of the super hyper competitive cards, but I just really like Cyrus, and I like machine decks in general. Now, the most underdeveloped character. If you know the original series, this probably isn't a surprise to you. Bastion freaking Misawa. Why in the heck did he get shafted? He was built up to be such a threatening rival to Jaden. He beat his rival Chaz. He faced off against Jaden to determine who's gonna face off in the school duel. And then he gets shafted because he falls in love with a tiger. Just like, why? I don't understand that. And then the Society of Light arc makes him even more of a joke. He's like, I don't want to join the Society of Light. But there's no other Raw students, even though Hasselberry is right there. But he's just like, I don't want to join the Society of Light. And then he duels Chaz, goes over to the Society of Light thing, and he's just like, I could win this duel, but if I win this duel, then I won't prove myself to Sartorius or something like that. And then the episode where Jaden duels Eisenstein, Hasselberry, nope. Bastion is literally running around the academy noob. I'm not even joking, I'm pretty sure that's how it is in the original version. But just like, Bastion was such a promising character at the start and they just literally shafted him. I don't know why they did that. Especially being a talented voice like Eric Stewart. It's just disappointing. And Bastion is the main reason I included the most underdeveloped character here. I wasn't gonna do this normally, but just Bastion himself is just a disappointing character in my opinion. But that's my review on Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Obviously, like the other ones, there's gonna be stuff that I didn't mention specifically, but if I did, we'd be here all day. Let me know what you think about Yu-Gi-Oh! GX as a whole. Do you think they should have dubbed Season 4? And do you agree that Cyrus is the best character in the show, not counting Jaden? And do you believe that Bastion deserved more development? I would really love to hear all your thoughts down in the comment section, but I'll see you next time. Momentai.